I'm gonna be frank with you guys right at the top here. I think the CX-50 is definitely the most attractive SUV in the segment, more attractive even than the CX-5, and that's mainly to do with this low wide stance, the long hood, the lower height of the hood. It just has a really nice planted look. Now up front, all the lighting you see here is LED. All of that is standard all the way down to the base 2.5 trim. So if you want LED standard and you want to not have to go all the way up to the $42,000 price of this one, you will get those lights standard all the way. So let's look at the front here. I love how Mazda blacked out the front grille, giving it more of a sporty look. This kind of screams, I want to go off the beaten path, and you can definitely do that with the CX-50. I also love the amber turn signals and DRLs. These double for both of those, and they fade in and out like they do in other Mazda products, and it just gives it a more premium vibe. We also have the camera up there below the Mazda logo for the 360-degree camera, and your front parking sensors right here. These massive air vents on the side, they don't look real at first, but if you take a closer look, the bottom portion does actually have a cutout so air can pass through. At 185.8 inches long with a 110.8-inch wheelbase, the CX-50 is actually 5 inches longer than the CX-5, putting it closer in size to a Subaru Forester than that Subaru Outback, but this definitely has more of a shape that's similar to the Outback with that lower roofline and of course that wider stance. Let me know if you prefer the station wagon look over the more upright crossover look of the CX-5. I do wonder if that will affect sales because a lot of people in America seem to just really despise station wagons, and this definitely gives that vibe off. Now down on the ground, we have 8.3 inches of clearance. That's tied with the Hyundai Tucson and only bested by the Subaru Forester, of course. Everything else here is going to have less than that. The CX-50 is available with 17, 18, or 20-inch wheels. These are the 20-inch wheels you'll find on all Turbo Premium and Premium Plus trims, as well as the non-Turbo Premium Plus trim. Everything else is going to come with a smaller 17-inch wheel, unless you go for the Turbo Meridian Edition, which is a more off-road ready model with smaller 18-inch wheels. These right here are riding on 245/45 Goodyear Eagle Touring tires. Outback, the design continues to strike me as modern and aesthetically pleasing, with a lot of smooth body lines, clean cuts, and really nice accents to these LED lights that we always see in Mazda products, with again the same fading action with the turn signals that I really like. We also have a rear wiper, which I do wish they had tucked up under there, but it's still nice to have one anyway. Down south we have dual exhaust ports that are real exhaust tips, nothing fake about that, and I do love the two-tone paint going on with the bumper right here. This is a power liftgate, and if you want to tow with your Mazda CX-50, you can do up to 3,500 pounds. These air vents that mimic the ones going on up front are actually not real like they are up there. They are just design elements back here. Under this hood, you'll find two engine choices, a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder that produces 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque and gets 27 miles per gallon combined. The turbocharged version of that engine that you see right here makes 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, which is very, very healthy for this segment. But as is typical with Mazda, they love to tell us the power output if you put premium fuel in, and that's going to be 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque. As with all of their other crossovers, all-wheel drive is standard. Personally, I find front seat comfort here to be really, really good. These seats are nicely appointed with this softer leather material. The seat backs themselves feel firm at first, but the center portion of the seat actually has a more squishy feel to it, so you kind of sink into these seats, and I find them to be very comfortable for long drives. These are 10-way power adjustable on this side with 2-way lumbar. The passenger side has 6-way power adjustment, but no lumbar support, and only the back portion of the seat bottom can tilt. The front cannot, like it does on this side. And also only on this side, we have 2-person memory seat settings. The steering wheel is heated on this model, and it is manually tilting and telescoping with a pretty decent range of motion, especially on the telescoping front. Visibility is also really good. The only thing really blocking it from the front angle are the Bose tweeters up top here. They do carve into that corner that you can see through the side mirrors. I think if you get one without that, those aren't going to be there, so visibility might be a little bit better. But visibility out the sides and back is really, really good because we have that squared off shape with a decent sized third window behind the second row. Here's what legroom looks like with this front seat in the position I had it set for my height at 5'9". Here it is with the seat all the way back in its tracks. I still have about 2 inches of knee room left, plenty of foot room, actually quite a bit of foot room under the front seat. Open up that power liftgate and you'll find 31.4 cubic feet of space, which is more than the Subaru Forester, GMC Terrain, Chevy Equinox, and the Mazda CX-5, but less than pretty much everybody else. But if you want to maximize space, you can fold down the second row with these pull levers right here on either side. That'll fold down the 60-40 split to give you 56.3 cubic feet, which is also not class leading by any means, but still pretty respectable. The reach to the back of the cargo area is actually quite a stretch, which would make you think this is a pretty large area in terms of volume, but in fact, because of that lower roof height, there's not much vertical room to work with compared to other options out there, which is why we have that smaller figure than most of the options. But luckily, Mazda gives us some space over here on the sides and some extra room down here. Well, not too much, but they do give you a spare tire, and then you of course have the Bose premium audio system subwoofer right there, the car jack to replace this tire if you need to, and all of that other stuff that you normally expect in a car like this. These foam parts can come out, and that's about it really. Starting in the second row, let's take a look around this interior. This is, again, that baseball glove brown that they call terracotta. It's really quite lovely in this Premium Plus trim. This is, again, the top trim of the CX-50, so this is about as nice as it gets. There's your panoramic moonroof, which has the power sunshade, so you have to actually operate that from the front seat. As we go around here, you'll see the height adjustable headrest, height adjustable seatbelts behind that. And then the door panel right here is a really nice design with a good mixture of materials. The padded armrest is the terracotta color. It is nice and soft, so you wouldn't have any problem resting your arm or elbow there. Up above that, we have a mixture of injection molded plastic and then sort of that leatherette material right here with the stitching down the center. It looks really nice and elegant. A cold to the touch door handle right here because that is real metal, and the grab handle is solid and nicely designed. I do also like the way they have the air vents designed to bulge out there on the sides in between the padded dashboard and the padded door. That leatherette material continues over the dashboard with that same contrasting stitching, and the air vents integrated above that into the body line, or I guess the dashboard line, which goes all the way across here below the large center screen. This is a partial touchscreen, so in the case of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, you can reach up there and touch the screen, but in any other situation like you have it right now in the default embedded navigation, you would have to use the Mazda rotary controller down in the center console. And you know what? That's fine with me because that screen is quite a reach away. You really don't want to be reaching up to touch it that much unless absolutely necessary. So I actually applaud Mazda for doing that because I actually find the Mazda rotary controller to be pretty easy to use once you've gotten the hang of it. Down below, we have physical controls for your HVAC that's welcomed in this segment. Some buttons have become touch capacitive in a lot of models, and that can be a little bit finicky depending on your finger type or your, I guess, your patience level, if you will. Down below that, we have not a Qi wireless charge pad, just a sort of storage spot to put whatever you want. 2 cup holders behind that, and the traditional style shifter right there. You can bop it over to the left to get into manual mode, and we also have paddle shifters on the steering wheel. Below the numbers for the shift gear, you have your drive mode select. There really is only one sport mode and an off-road mode, then of course the standard normal mode. Here's that rotary controller there in the center. It's got a nice solid premium feel to it when you use it. You have your buttons around that for those quadrants that control navigation, your back button, your music, and your home button. On the left of that, your electronic parking brake and your button for the auto brake hold. To the right, your volume and seek track knob, as well as your star button, which can get you directly to a favorite function in the infotainment system. The real location of that Qi wireless charge pad, which is optional, is actually right under here. This is where the split opening center armrest happens, so you can do that right there, and this is where you will find your charger. Then in there, it's a pretty, average size space. You can charge items down there, and they do give you this nice indent right here, so you can close this up and still have your cord naturally flowing out of that area. I do think that's a nice touch. And thankfully now we have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard, so you don't actually have to plug it in there anytime. That's just optional if you want to plug in and charge an extra device. Up top, we do have the sunglass holder as a nice feature that I wish more cars had these days. Of course, your control for the power moonroof, or I guess the panoramic moonroof, and then your dome lights on the sides. Your start-stop button's going to be right there, and then if I move over here, here's that typical Mazda steering wheel design that I really like. It's not a flat bottom or anything like that, but it has a really nice grip to it. It feels nice in the hand, and the buttons work really well. On the left here, we have seek and track and volume, as well as your voice control, and the button to change what's going on in the screen back there. On the right, we have adaptive cruise control settings, and you know what? It all looks really simple and elegant, and it works well. Again, this can be heated on some trim levels. It is heated here. The instrument cluster is partially LCD. That center portion is configurable, but really not to much of an extent. If I press the info button on the steering wheel, it'll change what I'm looking at. There are your adaptive cruise control views. It's going to show what's in your blind spot or show little indications that there are things in your blind spot in there. Then I can go back to the speedometer look. Then we can get to your fuel economy and back to that screen. So there's really just those 3 options. You can customize the way the readouts on the sides look, the MPG and the fuel. You can have it a digital readout like it is here, or you can have it as an actual vertical bar. Now let's get the CX-50 out on the road. When it comes to acceleration, it took me 6.6 seconds to get to 60 miles per hour. That's not as fast as a Hyundai Santa Fe with its 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder, but that's going to be faster than most of the other options that are smaller than the Santa Fe, things like the Tucson, anything with a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, but it could be around the same time as what you might get in one of the hybrid options. The engine is working with the 6-speed automatic transmission, and if there's anything holding back this experience, it's probably that transmission, but it really isn't as bad as some people may say. Sure, there are 8-speed, 9-speed, and 10-speed automatics out there that will enable quicker acceleration, and even CVTs might do the same, but this transmission still does a pretty good job at being pretty responsive to your right foot. Sure, it could be a little bit faster, but we do have the paddle shifters on here which allow you to engage with the transmission a little bit more, and when you hit the buttons themselves, the transmission does immediately start to do something, but because it's an older transmission, it's not going to be like dual clutch quick in terms of changing gears. We also have engine automatic stop start and a nice auto brake hold feature, which together really work well to make sitting in traffic a little bit easier. The brakes on here are honestly even more impressive though, because it only took me 106 feet to stop from 60 miles per hour back to zero, and that's partially to do with the 245mm wide tires and the fact that the brake pedal is pretty firm. There's brake action as soon as you tap on the top of the pedal, so these brakes are very confidence-inspiring around town and in quick stop maneuvers. Dynamics-wise, this is still a Mazda through and through. Yes, it's heavier than a CX-30 or a Mazda 3, but it feels very similar to those cars because it's got the same suspension setup, the same transmission, and the same engine. Now, when you're driving this around town, you will find that this is basically one of the best driving cars in the segment, and the rear suspension issue is honestly a non-starter for me because this is not a track vehicle. This is a vehicle that's meant to be driven around with people and gear inside, and when you do that around town and even on the highway, you will find that it is really fun to drive. The steering weight is actually kind of heavy, actually the heaviest I've experienced in a car in this segment, so if you don't like that about it, then you might not like the CX-50 at all, but I think that aids in the fun to drive nature, and for me personally, it really helps with driving on the highway and keeping a nice on-center feel. You won't find yourself, drifting around or wallowing around in the lanes, and the lane keep assist does a decent job at keeping you in your lane, but it's not going to be a full lane tracing assist. It's not going to center you in your lane at all times. It's really going to be more of a reactive system. In that regard, I wish Mazda would actually update their safety systems. I wish they would be more like Toyota's system or Hyundai and Kia's system that are a little bit more active in keeping you centered in your lane. Now, ride quality is still very premium feeling in this car, but it's definitely going to be firmer than what you're used to from things like a RAV4 or Hyundai Tucson. This all goes back to what I said in my Mazda 3 video, which is the fact that Mazda really knew what they were doing when they tuned the suspension setup. You don't get into this car and immediately think that it's a semi-independent suspension out back. You would actually think this is one of the better riding independent setups in both front and rear. There are some cars out there with independent setups in the front and the rear that don't feel quite as premium as this feels. But there are times, of course, in curves with broken pavement where the rear end will hop around just a tad, but it's very well controlled. The cabin itself is also pretty quiet. I've measured 61 decibels in here at 50 miles per hour. They've done a lot to do sound deadening and muffle noises coming in from harsh impacts from the road. And so because of that, this cabin is a really nice place to be, even out on the open highway. Road noise and wind noise are pretty well controlled, but like what we're driving on right now, you do hear the undulations and the weird surface changes going on in the road because we do have those wider tires. There's just more surface area contact for you to get that input. So, compared to other models out there with 225 width tires or things like that, this cabin will transmit a little bit more road noise, but again, it's more muffled than it is harsh or annoying. And thanks to that 6-speed automatic and the fact that this is a pretty thirsty engine, I managed 24 miles per gallon in the few days I had the CX-50. They rated at 25 miles per gallon combined. I was doing a lot of highway driving and a good bit of city driving, so I feel like I got a good mix of the two. So 24 miles per gallon, that could be a lot worse, especially considering this is a turbo model with 310 pound-feet of torque. But if you want to do a little bit better, more like 27 miles per gallon combined, they do have the naturally aspirated version. But as I mentioned earlier, if you want all of the safety features that you get on this trim level, then you won't be able to go down to that engine and get better fuel economy because all of those extra safety features are only on this Turbo Premium Plus trim. Mazda has hinted that a hybrid version of the CX-50 is on its way. We already know that because this is built in the same plant as the Toyota Corolla Cross. down in Alabama that there's potential for just the Toyota hybrid system you find in the Corolla Cross or perhaps the RAV4 to make its way into this system. And I think that would be a really nice addition to give this the well-rounded powertrain lineup of a base naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, a high-performance turbo engine, and a hybrid for the better fuel efficiency. That is one thing that I really hope they end up doing sooner rather than later, but it's almost mid-2023 and we still haven't heard an official word on the US side about a hybrid CX-50. After all that, what do I think of the CX-50? Well, for starters, I find it to have the most attractive exterior design in the segment. It's got more of a station wagon look than an upright crossover look, so if you're a fan of something like a Subaru Outback, this is definitely going to be more your speed. It also has one of the nicest interiors in the segment. I would say the new Kia Sportage has it tied in terms of design. You also get that dual screen setup in that model and a lot of interesting color choices, but in terms of look and feel and overall premiumness, I would say the CX-50 has it beat. If you like powerful engines in your two-row crossover, then the turbocharged 2.5-liter 4-cylinder is definitely a great engine for you. The problem is it's mated to an older 6-speed automatic, so that does bring it down a little bit, but other than the hybrids and plug-in hybrid options in this segment, really nothing else is going to have the kind of grunt and acceleration feel you're going to get out of this turbo engine. So if you're looking for that, the CX-50 and its sibling, the CX-5, are really the only games in town. It also drives like a Mazda should. All of the planes of motion are well kept under control. There's not much body roll, not much pitch and dive. Of course, you do have that semi-independent rear suspension, which does allow it to get a little bit upset in the back over curves that have rough pavement, but you really don't notice it that much, and you only really notice it if you're pushing the car very hard. Otherwise, it really does drive so well. You might not, however, like Mazda's infotainment system, which in the CX-50 is a hybrid between a rotary controller-based system and a touchscreen. If you're in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you can use the touchscreen when the car is not moving, but otherwise you do have to use the rotary knob, which after you figured out where to push and click and turn the knob to get to the regular functions that you use, it actually becomes second nature. So in my mind, it's actually not as big of an issue that some people make it out to be. There's not as much room on the inside also as some competitors. It is a pretty comfortable second row with a decent amount of cargo space behind it, more than some options out there like a GMC Acadia, but it doesn't have as much as the new Kia Sportage or the Hyundai Tucson or the Subaru Forester or things like that. So you want more space. The CX-50 is not going to be the worst, but it's not going to be the best. The main thing that brings down the turbocharged engine and the naturally aspirated 4-cylinder in the CX-50 is the 6-speed automatic. This is a very old transmission, and not that we need 10 speeds, but 8 speeds would really modernize the feel of the drivetrain and make it a little bit quicker shifting and probably more fuel efficient because you'd be able to work with higher ratios. So Mazda, I would really like to see you try to get some newer transmissions into your outgoing models because that would really save the really otherwise awesome feel you get behind the wheel of these turbocharged models. Tying into that, where is the hybrid system? Mazda promised a hybrid CX-50 last year at the launch event, and it's almost mid-2023 and we haven't seen it yet. We do know that recently in Japan they did officially confirm it's coming, but whenever it comes to the US, we don't really know. And which hybrid system it's going to use, it's likely going to be a Toyota system, but will it be the Corolla Cross hybrid system with the 196 horsepower and all-wheel drive setup, or will it be the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder hybrid system from the RAV4, also available with all-wheel drive? We just don't know yet, but that would really help round out the lineup for the CX-50, giving it honestly a better transmission with the CVT you get in those hybrids and just the better fuel efficiency that the CX-50 is lacking. That is one area that the CX-50 could do a lot better in, even with the base 4-cylinder, so adding a hybrid would really help it out. When it comes to pricing, the CX-50 is a little bit interesting because it doesn't have the lowest base price on this particular list, but it does have the highest top-end price. And you are getting a lot of car for the money, but look at the Kia Sportage. It starts way below the CX-50 and it caps off at $39,000, or just a hair under $39,000. And while that's not giving you the power of the turbo, it's giving you, like I said earlier, almost or just about as nice of an interior. You do get a lot of interior color options that you don't get on the Mazda, and its design is very nice. But it also has a much larger cargo area and passenger volume. It actually basically has the largest in both for the segment. Now the Subaru Outback I'm putting on here instead of the Forester because I do believe its shape and format fits the shape and format of the CX-50 better than the Forester, which is more shaped like a CX-5. But the Outback starts at $29,620 and it goes up to $43,861. But it's going to be a little bit bigger on the inside. It is a longer vehicle, has a longer roof, so you're going to be able to put longer things on top of that, more stuff in the back, and it actually costs a little bit less fully loaded. And of course, the CX-5, the car that this will ultimately end up replacing in the Mazda lineup, it's still kicking it for 2023, so if you prefer that more upright look and you prefer its interior and exterior design, Mazda still makes the CX-5 for you, and it starts at $28,075, so just a little bit less than the CX-50, and it tops out way below it, $41,620, and you're getting about the same amount of feature content because you still get the turbo engine and you still get the pretty nice Mazda interior. I don't think it's nearly as nice as the CX-50 or the latest interiors from Mazda, but it's still a lot better than a lot of the competition out there. So if you like a nice interior and you like Mazda driving dynamics and you like an independent rear suspension, then you might want to go with the CX-5, but get one while you can because it is not exactly long for this world. Let me know what you think about all that in the comment section below. Do you like the CX-5 more than the CX-50 or vice versa? Which camp are you? I'm definitely camp CX-50. Now when it comes to the Subaru Outback, I think it is also a really awesome choice in this segment, and it also has a really nice interior for the money. You have that giant screen in the middle that's basically standard because you do get a small dual screen setup that is more real estate than you'll find on any CX-50, and I think it also really appeals to the outdoor enthusiast, which the CX-50 is also trying to do, and I think it pulls it off in some ways. But the Outback will always be that supreme off-road oriented vehicle for the mainstream buyer. And if that is you, then you might want to take a look at the CX-50 too. Like this video if you're a fan of two-row small crossovers, and subscribe if you want to see more detailed, in-depth car reviews like this. Of course, we have the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast channel on YouTube, as well as the EV Buyer's Guide channel and the Alex on Auto's website for all the written reviews. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And until I see you next time, thank you so much for watching and take care.